Hello, 2021 Vestry. On behalf of the parish, I ask you to please accept my appreciation for your commitment and your passion for serving as leaders in St. Philip's Parish. Your sacrifice, I would suggest, of time and talent as well as treasure is truly a blessing for each and every one of us. So here we are. We're doing this by video and by recording, and it's not live. And there are going to be glitches. I may get phone calls. I may have walk-ins. I'm sitting in my office right now, and it's Monday, which is a holiday, but that doesn't mean that we won't have activity. I'm also going to confess right up front, I'm reading this from a script that I've typed, so I can try to stay on track with the slides. This is not going to be as easy, I think, as it would have been had we been doing this live, and I would have been interacting with you. Also, it's going to feel like just a complete information download because, again, we're not interacting with each other. What we have is no opportunity for interface. It's just straight information from my mind that's on my page to your ears and to your brain. And so rather than just looking at slides and listening to me, I really encourage you to take notes, write down questions and thoughts. And tomorrow night, you won't have listened to this by then because we won't release it until right after vestry meeting. But tomorrow night we'll establish a time for a Zoom session so we can enter into discussion and questions and answers and clarifications. Towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to kind of make a couple of assignments, and so please pay attention to that point in time. I'm going to ask you to prepare for different duties in terms of vestry for the coming year. And so without further ado, we are going to try to make our way through this. Again, I apologize for glitches. I've never done this before, so I may get lost in my notes and which slide we're on, but hopefully not. So here we go. Today, our retreat is going to cover where we came from, where we are currently, and where I perceive that we need to go from this point forward to continue to grow both as a parish, but especially as a vestry and as a program church. So 2 years ago already is when I arrived to serve as your rector. I can't believe that that time has already passed, that we've already gone for 2 years. Goodness gracious, the time really goes by fast. I'm taking care of something that just came in. Okay. During those, before I got here at any rate, you had journeyed with Canon Jim, and you went through a time of interim ministry and healing, as well as under his guidance, St. Philip's reorganized. Now, we use titles such as pastoral size and transitional size and program size churches. And what we mean by that is that the organization, the operating procedures, the tensions and strengths all change in each of these dynamics. There are strengths, but there's also dangers associated with each as a parish changes in size, but the organization and operations lag behind and they really try to resist and they try to remain the same. St. Philip's was averaging probably over 200 people on a normal Sunday for some time. However, when Canon Jim arrived, St. Philip's was, for the most part, still organized like a pastoral-sized church. And we'll go over those numbers. Well, you see the numbers up there, 75 to 150, and we're talking about over 200. In this pastoral-sized church, it's rector-centered. Everything that happens flows across the rector's desk for their decision. The rector is expected to and wants to attend all the meetings of the church and oftentimes chairs them as well. Everything from altar guild to pastoral ministry to outreach. If the rector is not involved, the ministry or the function is considered and viewed as many times, well, it's just not that important. If it was important, the rector would be here. And ultimately, the rector, the priest, the lone priest, is managing every single process and every ministry in the parish. And in many cases, vestry members become assigned to various ministries by virtue of being on the vestry. And then they end up, as they attend these various meetings in various different ministry areas, they become the manager, the lay lead person. And the danger in that comes to mind is, from my experience at another church, is when uh, a Sunday school or youth ministry, a person who was basically cajoled into running for vestry is suddenly thrust into Sunday school or youth ministry as the vestry person, and they end up having to organize, direct, and manage it without any sense of call for that ministry. As a parish continues to grow in size, the transitional size church is next on the growth ladder. It should be noted that transition means just that. No one, no church, no organization, no person, no priest plans to stay in a transitional size church. And what this means is that the churches, and especially the clergy, resist making organizational changes. They go with what got them there. And the results of that decision are listed on your slide. The rector and the vestry roles end up remaining the same. They don't change as they need to. The rector simply can no longer keep up, and ultimately the priest, the rector, will burn out. Ministry overall will suffer greatly because more needs to be done than what can be done under this organization. The budget is typically not large enough yet for an assistant priest, and the rector becomes more and more and more stretched out. And because the rector goes into survival mode and the organization isn't in place to train and deploy the laity, the ministry of the baptized is suppressed. It's resisted. It's not in a place where they are enabled and encouraged and empowered to go forth. This brings us to the program size church. And before we discuss this organization, I want to stop for a moment and realize the recent history of St. Philip's. Now, I may not be spot on here, but it is my understanding that Father Barry retired simply because he was burning out. Remember, St. Philip's was still organized and operated as a pastoral-sized church. After a time of interim, after Father Barry after a time of interim, you called a young priest, perhaps not age-wise young, but in ordination years, very young, and she was simply not equipped in her ministry experience to recognize the demands and the need for organizational change and to be a leader in that change. And then Canon Jim came, and the change began. And I need you to latch on to that word, began. We have not arrived. St. Philip's is not where it needs to be ultimately. We're still on a journey in this program church model and organization. The work that St. Philip's did with Canon Jim was tremendous, but it was a beginning. And we need to make adjustments so that the footprint that Canon Jim gave us begins to fit our foot much better, and we can journey going forward. In a program-sized church, and you can read the slide, the rector becomes a leader and visionary. The vestry become leaders and visionaries and strategic planners. And this is a huge difference from previous organizations. Before, the rector and vestry served as managers. They were hands-on, day in and day out, in all the ministries, everything that was taking place in the church. If something happened, it was because of the rector and the vestry being involved and making it happen. And now, in this model, the clergy and vestry empower and delegate. Folks, this ain't easy. It flies in the face of how the church has operated and how priests operate for years and years, if not forever. For the rector to release the power to make decisions is huge. The learning curve and trust required is tremendous. And it's the same for the vestry. Suddenly, all those other management needs are removed from the table of the vestry. And here we are left sitting at a table and we're looking at each other wondering, what's next? What are we supposed to do now? Everything we used to do, for the most part, has been removed from our responsibility portfolio, or at least our hands-on portfolio. And this is the beauty of a program church organization. It's the beauty of this whole operation. The laity, the baptized, they become the ministers of the church. Lay leaders become ministry managers, and the rector and vestry must exercise patience. It takes time for people and laity, one and the same, to learn how to walk in those shoes. They will fall down, they will fail, there will be mistakes, and we need to be there to pick them up and support them and continue to encourage them. Laity in this operational model become the backbone of the church, the day in and the day out ministers. I need to pause just for a second and take a sip of water. Now, this is how it's supposed to be. This is when a church can become so very strong and ministry begin to spread its wings and flourish in terms of variety and depth. The Church of Jesus Christ, the Episcopal Church, St. Philip's, was never designed to only have clergy as the ministers. That's an unfortunate byproduct or result of the way we learned how to do church. It's how I was taught in seminary how to do church. It's been that way from times past. But our catechism declares that all the ministers of the church, by the very nature of their baptism, are the laity. Our catechism teaches that the ministers of the church, in order of how they are listed, are first lay persons. Then come bishops, and then priests, and then deacons. The laity are the primary ministers of the church. If you look at the priestly ordination in the Book of Common Prayer, the prayer states that the role, the job, the duty, the charge of the priest is not to be the minister, but rather it is to equip the saints, the laity, every baptized person in the parish, for the work of ministry and the building up of Christ's body. In other words, to train and to teach, enable and empower and release the laity for ministry, and then to stay out of their way, to be there to encourage them and support them, but to stay out of the way. St. Philip's has grown over the years, but I'm guessing that we had nearly as many ministries when Father Barry was here as we have now. And as I've already pointed out, it is simply impossible for the rector to be the center of 50 different ministries. It's impossible for any one priest to be even involved in 50 different ministries. And that's not in any way to say that the rector is only involved in those important ministries. They are all important. Each ministry is critical for us as a church and as lay ministers. We need to understand that ministry is important and critical. It has nothing to do whether or not the rector or priest shows up for the meeting, runs the meeting, or runs the ministry. It has everything to do with the reality that the ministry allows us to serve. And service is the work clothes of love. It's the overalls of love. Ministry is how we express our love to God and to one another and to the community. Now, if you have your Bibles, I always like to say that. If you have your Bibles, turn to Exodus chapter 18. If you don't, then pause and go find a Bible and turn to that passage and read it. And then unpause and hear what I have to say about that. We read this passage, it's all about Moses. He has all of Israel in the wilderness. and he's working his tail off trying to organize and manage everything. They just went from Egypt, where there were Egyptian overlords and managers, and they were telling the Israelites everything they could do and what they had to do, and they were being managed day in and day out, hour by hour. And now here they are in the wilderness, completely free and without overlords and without oversight. And Moses is trying to do all this. His father-in-law, that is Jethro, comes out one day to visit Moses, and he watches with dismay because Moses Moses is completely overmatched. He's failing. And Jethro approaches Moses and in no uncertain terms tells Moses, look, you're doing it wrong. Trust me, listen to me. And he tells Moses to change his organization, his operation. Moses needs to select lay leaders, leaders of the nation, to serve over thousands and over hundreds and over 50s and over 10s, to delegate and empower and to lead. Let others manage at the working level. Moses, you need to lead. Now, we may not have thousands and we may not be organized by hundreds, but we do have upwards to 50s and definitely 10s that need to be managed. Ministries need to be managed. And then people need to serve as leaders over the managers, over the management of all the ministries. And so this brings us up to now. St. Philip's is a program church. We've initiated our reorganization. We took the basic steps. We took the big steps and the challenging steps to move from pastoral through transitional to program church model. And now we need to begin to understand how to adjust, how to make course corrections, how to make the boot fit our foot for the footprint that Ken and Jim left us. And in this model, the vestry leads. We lead through strategic visioning, looking down the road 1 to 5 years, seeing where we are right now and where we want, or more precisely, need to be, and then prepare to get us there through planning and budgeting. One of the essential duties that Ken and Jim provide ministry to the board chairs. Folks, I'm going to be blunt. We aren't doing that. The only formal interaction we have with board chairs is during the past 2 retreats. We had the ministry board chair spend an hour with us for a how goes it. Now, some of us may serve on a board by happenstance, by our involvement in another ministry in the church, but not as vestry. We have not had intentional form of ministry as vestry, as leadership with our ministry board chairs, and we need to. It's what the vestry needs to do in a program church setting where the ministry board chairs are providing daily management of all the ministries. All 50 ministries are managed by the board chairs, those 6 boards that we'll talk about in a minute, and they need our support. They need our encouragement. They need our leadership. And to that end, I believe that we need to provide regular, intentional, ongoing, overt, seen and heard ministry support by serving as chaplains to each ministry board and chair. This will create the environment and opportunity for us to build relationship with each ministry board chair, as well as the entire board. And therefore, we can begin to provide support. We'll have a relationship where we'll be able to understand what's going on and what the challenges are and what the frustrations are and what the limitations are. And through that relationship, we'll be able to bring comfort, we'll be able to bring encouragement, and we'll be able to perhaps provide understanding as to the limitations or possibilities with respect to the strategic plan for the parish. This will also provide an important channel of communication, two-way communication from the vestry to the ministry board chair and ministry board, as well as from the ministry board and the chair back to the vestry. We'll discuss this a little bit more as we go forward. And this is not, and let me repeat, not intended as a vestry liaison who overshadows and reverts to managing or attempting to run the board or the meetings. It's to provide support and communication to ensure that the board and the chair remember and understand the strategic vision of the parish, and to ensure that the vestry understands the critical ministry taking place within this ministry board. Ministry boards manage all the ministries, all 50 plus growing ministries at St. Philip's. I don't manage any of them. And the ministry's members themselves execute all the ministry at St. Philip's. It needs to be that way. Now, St. Philip's, as I just mentioned, is divided into 6 ministry boards. Those ministry boards manage all 50 ministries. Originally, you divided the parish into 5, and now we've grown into 6 ministry boards. We have added pastoral care. The scientific manner in which this organization took place was simply this. When Ken and Jim was here and we went from pastoral to program church, members of the vestry took sticky notes and placed them in ministry-like groups, and those groups became our ministry boards. Needless to say, they were not and should not be set in stone, and so adjustments have been made over the 2 years that I've been here. Our 6 ministry boards are Faith Formation, and Nan Bush is the chair. Finance and Facilities, and Don Halbert is the chair. Outreach, where Ruth Smith is the chair. Parish Life, and Linda Humphreys is now the chair. Worship, Ricky Evans is the chair. And Pastoral Care, currently Deacon Pam is the acting chair. Our new assistant priest, when he or she arrives, is called and arrives, will eventually fill this chair. These are our 6 ministry boards managing over 50 plus ministries. So, who are we becoming? Adapting a new organizational model is not a static event. I spoke with Ken and Jim at length about this process when I first arrived, and then again later on, and he was adamant that what he left us was a beginning. Each parish has to grow into a program church organization that works for them. There's a basic skeletal support structure that Ken and Jim gave us. Now we need to put flesh on those bones. We need to make adjustments and corrections and enhancements. We need to adapt it to our situation. Now, all of you know that I've walked the Camino de Santiago on 2 different occasions and plan to go back again in another year or 2. And there's an example that I want to bring from there to us to help us understand how vital this course correction is. So, I ask you to indulge me for a few moments. When we were on Camino, we were quite excited about the entire thing. Our first Camino started with preparation. We needed everything from backpacks to boots. And it's the boots that I want to talk about. Just any pair of boots won't work. You need boots, make no mistake about it. There's a lot of places where you can twist your ankle and the footing is treacherous at best. And my feet responded best to a product or a boot type called Keens, as well as to Hoka 11s, if that means anything to anybody. Others find that the best boot for them is a Merrill or a Solomon. But it doesn't end there. Then you need to figure out what size you need. Well, I've always needed a 10.5. I know that's too much information, but it's essential for this. But you find that your normal size doesn't work on a recurring basis when you're long walking each day. Your feet will swell as day goes on. So a 10.5 size boot will be too small by 4 in the afternoon because your feet are going to expand. You need to buy an extra half size. so that it can accommodate your foot. But wait, there's more. Veterans of the Camino, and now I am one, and so I agree with this, insist that you need to wear two pair of socks. Inner socks that wick away the sweat from your foot, and then the wool outer socks to provide comfort and protection. You see, the two pair of socks allow the friction that takes place within your boot to happen between the socks and not between the boot and the sock, which will cause your foot to get a blister. So you got to go up another half size. What's this all mean? Well, we convert from our daily life, from wearing sandals each day or our comfortable everyday shoes at home, to boots that we have to buy for the Camino, which end up being a size too big. And then you got to get the socks, and you got to get the right socks, and you got to get the boots that are large enough. And now that you've got the socks and the boot and you're ready to start walking, remember you're going to have a 20-pound pack on your back. You're going to be walking up hills and down hills. And when I say hills, I mean the Pyrenees Mountains. That's hard to train for in Southport. So there's tricks to lacing your boot to ensure that your toes don't press forward into your boot and begin to crunch the end of your toes, which will cause nail problems or, again, blisters. When you're going down the mountains or when you're going up the mountains, and they ensure that your heel stays planted and doesn't slide about. So you have to learn how to tie your boot just the right way. Tie it too tight and you'll rue the day. Tie it too loose and you'll blister right up. Now, my daughter, Rachel, when we walked our first Camino, was 21. She was in her prime. She was just graduating from college. She was a runner. She had just finished running a half marathon for fun the weekend before we left for Spain. She came to the Camino with her boots and her socks, and she had blisters by day 3. Why? Well, she only wore one pair of socks. She couldn't put on 2 because the boots she had bought were sized for home use, not for hiking. So as she adapted her walk to accommodate the blisters, rather, the pain went up and it affected her ankle, and then her knee swelled up. And as she made allowance for the blisters in the knee, her hip became painful. The kid at age 21 was an athlete in her prime, and she hobbled and stumbled 500 miles across Spain. So, what's this mean for us? Well, just this. Because Canon Jim gave us a program church doesn't mean that we are set for the journey. We need to make corrections and adjustments and changes to ensure that we're operating without stumbling or friction or failure. This is to say there are changes we need to make to help make the program church model fit our feet so that we can continue our pilgrimage with our Lord. Okay, each and every ministry, as I've said at St. Philip's, is critical because ministry is how we grow into our vision. Ministry is how we serve, and service is the work clothes, the overalls of love. Ministry is how we love God and we love others. So let's switch gears here for a minute and talk about vision. What is our vision? Does St. Philip's have a vision statement? If so, do you know what it is? My suspicion is that you may not, and here is the vision. Our vision is to grow in unity, in diversity, and in the Spirit of Christ. So let me ask you, when a visitor comes to the church and you get to talk with them, is there an easy way to share what our vision is with them? Something like, St. Philip's is all about growing in unity and diversity. And of course, in the Spirit of Christ. That's not really something that easily flows into conversation, is it? I'm not sure it's something that we consider in our 50 plus ministries or our 6 ministry boards or in our vestry meetings. So let's consider this statement. Our vision is to grow in diversity. Okay, this is Southport. What does that mean? How diverse can we be? How inclusive can we be? Can we be inviting? Yes. But a vision of being diverse, again, this is Southport. How diverse can we expect to be or become? What does that look like? How do we know if we're even pursuing that vision? I mean, there's not a lot of people that don't look like us. If I'm being blunt and honest, this is a predominantly Anglo-white area. There are people of color, and typically the people of color have different worship communities from us. And so, what does that mean? Does that mean socioeconomic? Does that mean political? Does that mean cultural? What does that mean? And what does it mean to grow in the Spirit of Christ? Is this the Holy Spirit? Is that what the Spirit of Christ is? Or is the Spirit of Christ the manner in which Christ lived and behaved? Or is it something else? I don't know. So, where are we with this? Let's consider the vision statement. Just rest here for a minute. Let's leave that and let's consider our mission statement. Do you have any idea what our mission statement is? And of course, you're probably reading it right now, but what is our mission statement? It's the mission of St. Philip's is to bring Christ to life in our lives and minister to the world in his name. So is this what we do in our ministry? Do people understand that the reason they are serving as an acolyte is to bring Christ to life or to minister to the world? Ladies, do you understand that's what you're doing when you're active in DOK or ECW? Men, what about you when you're active in men's group or the brotherhood? Folks, I believe we need to address both of these areas, our vision and our mission statements. What is the difference? When I was a deployment officer for the Air Force, I attended something called War Plan School. And during that training, they provided an essential understanding of vision and mission. And there is a huge difference. But I'm not sure it's widely known or understood out of the military or Air Force arena. The vision statement is exactly that. The vision statement. The vision statement informs the entire organization of our goal, what we are living towards in the long term. It's forward thinking. It answers the motivational question of why. Why does St. Philip's exist? Why does the Outreach Board exist? Why does Angel Tree exist? Why would I want to be part of this church or this ministry? Why is this place, St. Philip's, different from civic organizations? Those are the questions that a vision statement should answer. Now, concerning vision statements, does the church have one vision statement that applies across the board, or does every ministry board and every ministry have a vision statement? What do you think? Well, the answer is one. Any organization with more than one vision needs glasses. We need to be single focused in our vision. Everyone focused on the ministry at hand because it feeds into the vision that gives the motivation for ministry. A vision statement, it needs to be concise and meaningful. It needs to be easy to remember, not abstract or wordy or cute. It needs to be short and simple. And it must apply across the board to all 6 ministry boards, as well as to each and every ministry. If the vision statement is forward thinking and gives the answer to why, then what is the mission statement? A mission statement answers many questions. Who, what, where, when, and how. It's the meat and potatoes of the church, of each ministry and the ministry board. When someone reads the mission statement, they immediately know what that entity is about, what that ministry is about, what that ministry board is about. So let me ask you the same question as before. Does a church have one single mission statement that applies across the board? Or does every ministry board and every ministry have a mission statement? The mission statement links what we do with why we do it. Every ministry board is unique, and therefore every ministry is unique, and each must have their own mission statement, and that includes the vestry. Now, I want to go back again to minister or to vision. And there is deep down inside of me a belief that rules my teaching and my preaching and my way of life. And I pray that it forms me and fashions me into the person that I was created to be. Since my arrival at St. Philip's, there's a recurring theme in every sermon I have preached. And I would ask you, if we were together, any thoughts, any ideas of what that theme is? Now, I'm not going to insist on this, but I want you to know that while I'm your rector, it will be the heart of what I preach and teach, because without it, I believe we're unable to walk the Christian life. And so I invite you to strongly consider making this the, or at least part of, the mission statement for St. Philip's. And here it is: love God and love others as Jesus loves us. It's the fulcrum of, it's what a person must do to be saved. The gospel answer, well, the question in the gospel is, what must a person do to be saved? And the gospel answer is to love God and love one another. A new commandment Jesus gives us: love one another as I have loved you. He gives us this in John 13, just before he's crucified, in the upper room after the Last Supper. It's not a suggestion. It's not an iteration. It's not an if you have time and can squeeze it in. It is the new commandment. And these two commands, to love God and to love others, are the hinges. I've preached about this already. They are the hinges that the entirety of the Christian life hangs upon. These two commandments, to love God and to love others. It's the focal lens we must bring to every aspect of Scripture. When we attempt to understand Scripture and apply it in our life, it needs to be through that focus. Without these two hinges, without these focuses, our lives hang like a broken door, unable to let people in or out, unable to function as designed, because without them, we're broken. Remember Jesus' words? On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. They're the hinges. All Scripture hangs upon them, upon the command to love God and to love others, and so does each of our lives. As an example of what I'm saying, if we were to adopt a new vision statement that says, we are called to love God and love others, then the mission statement, perhaps for the outreach board, could be, we love others by taking what God has given us in time, talent, and treasure, and meeting the needs of the community. And the mission statement for the angel tree could then be, we love the parents and children of those in prison by providing Christmas gifts to their children. I hope this example helps you see how mission statement includes how the ministry is growing into the vision of the parish. We love God, we love others, and then it goes on to say how, what, and when, by doing X. The vision informs the action, and the action is linked to the vision. The why informs the what, the how, the when, and the where. Said another way, if we can't link the what, the action, the ministry, to the why, the vision, the natural question to ask is, well, should we be doing this? Okay, enough for now about vision and mission. Let's get back to ministry and the ministers of the church, the laity. How do the laity, and how do any of us, get involved in the right ministry or in ministry at all? I want to offer a short teaching here. So I encourage you again, take notes. In the Bible, there are several important chapters in the New Testament that discuss various types of gifts. There are 3 distinct gifts addressed in the Bible. In Ephesians 4, we have a list of gifts known as ministry gifts. They're basically the ministry offices in the church. One receives this gift to serve in this capacity. And I'm going to let you look it up. You can see the chapter, it's Ephesians 4. And then we come to 1 Corinthians 12, and there's another list of gifts. And these are known as the manifestation gifts. These gifts are episodic. They come and they go, and they're distributed as the Holy Spirit sees fit. These gifts manifest the presence and the blessing of God through the Holy Spirit. And then in Romans 12, there is a third listing of gifts, and these are known as the motivational gifts. These gifts are distributed by the Holy Spirit in each person's creation. We just had a psalm last week that talked about how we were woven together in our mother's womb, and the Spirit of God was taking care of things in terms of our creation. And it's at this point in time that the Holy Spirit is preparing us for this ministry. And then in baptism, as the Spirit of God gives birth to our spirit, we are born again. And that gift is woven into this being that is us, that is me, that is I. And it's called a motivational gift because when we exercise this gift, it comes as a second nature. Now, it should be noted that all 3 of these books, Ephesians, Corinthians, and Romans, when they're speaking about gifts, all 3 of them precede or include in the discussion of the gifts a discourse about love. They are all linked to and based in God's love. That's important to remember. Now, the Greek word for gifts is charism. And I want to do kind of an etymology on this word so that we have a fuller appreciation, understanding of what's taking place when we do what we do with God's gift that he created us to do with. So let's take it down to its basic root. There's car. Car is the root word of this word, and by itself, car means joy. Now add the suffix is to car, you get charis, and charis or charis means grace. So to add to joy, you get grace. And then you add you add the suffix m to it, you get charism. And that's the word for gift. So you have joy and grace and gift. And then you add the final suffix letter a, charisma, and you get the word for movement. So put all these 4 different, going from the root of joy to the different suffixes of joy, grace, gifts, and movement, and you get the meaning. When you're exercising a gift that God has given you, it is a joyful movement of God's grace within you. A joyful movement of God's grace within you. It's not that you're happy and you have a giddy feeling, but you have joy deep down inside. It results in a joyful person. This is the reason that we link the why to the what, the vision to the mission. The exercise of our gift, the gift that God has woven into us, is a joyful movement of God's grace. It is centered in love, God's love. And it's meant so that we can love God and love others. This is a critical and necessary question everyone must ask and answer for themselves. Do you have joy in what you're doing right now in life, and especially at St. Philip's, in the way that you serve? If not, you may not be serving in the right way and in the right place. Don't try to serve in outreach grudgingly when serving in the Flower Guild brings you joy. We want members of St. Philip's who find joy in greeting visitors, serving as greeters. The last thing we want, and the last thing the person I would suggest wants, is to be forced or to force someone into serving in a ministry because it has to be done. We don't want people who look like they were baptized in lemon juice greeting visitors on a Sunday morning. We are a resurrection people, and no one has the gift. And if no one has a gift for a certain ministry, then folks, we just need to let that ministry die and go away and come back to life at a proper time. Again, we are a resurrection people. We believe in new life and new time. All that is to say that our vestry members and our ministry board chairs need to be experiencing joy by serving in their roles in the church, or to reevaluate their ministry placement. Each year, ministry board chairs need to renew their commitment. They're there for the long term. We want them there for as many years as possible, upwards to 10. But the key renewal to consider is joy. It's joy. Joy is the determining factor, nothing else. Their life will not be filled with the joy of the Lord if they're serving in the wrong ministry. And our ministry as vestry is to enable that joy to be full as they serve as ministry board chairs. Okay, we're going to switch gears again here. Let's turn our focus on the mission of rector and vestry in a program church. We make a huge transition from hands-on management to leadership. As mentioned earlier, this means that we must give up what we have been accustomed to having, our hands in all the pots. As we delegate and empower lay ministries of the church to run, as we lay ministers rather of the church to run the ministries of the church and to manage the ministries of the church, we need to step out of it. This is a point that many people in churches struggle with when they move to a program church model, and that's letting go. It's also important to realize that the laity must be educated and trained and encouraged and empowered to step up to the ministry and to engage. If they feel it's a facade, a shadow, or a ruse, they'll simply step away. And the leaders, that's you and me, vestry and rector, will have no one to lead and no ministry taking place. It's critical for empowerment and encouragement to take place. Our roles change, they shift. Now we as vestry, as leaders, we focus on tomorrow, what we will need to do to be ready. And that, of course, requires that we have prayed, that we've discerned, and that we have planned for the future, that we've done so not just theoretically, but concretely, that we've placed it not just into planning sessions and planning teams for future ministry, but into our budget process. We've considered that, and we've applied it, and we've programmed it. We've looked ahead and we've programmed our parish and our ministries and our budget to make it possible. So, to state the obvious, once we've determined the near-term goal, which is 1 to 5 years, and I may say this later, but I want to say it before I forget, if we start looking beyond 5 years, we're wasting our time because too much changes. Even 5 years is a stretch. Technology is changing at a rate that we can't even guess at. Who would have thought we'd be doing a vestry retreat by Zoom, or vestry meetings by Zoom, or ministry by Zoom just a year ago? I didn't even know Zoom existed. But we must, as leadership, establish priorities and guidance that pursue the goal of 1 to 5 years. This requires intentional, clear, and repetitive communication so that the chairs, the ministries, and indeed the entire parish know and understand where we're headed. As leaders, a priority we are charged with, again, I've already talked about this, is the care of our ministry board chairs, building that relationship and caring, not being only informed, but supportive of their ministry, ensuring communication is taking place between vestry and ministry board and between ministry board and vestry. The clergy, that's the deacons, myself, and our assistant priests, we need to make ourselves available to all the lead ministers so that we can train them and counsel them and equip them as needed. That's 50 different ministries. And of course, it's essential that we as leaders take care of the administrative needs, such as policies and procedures, minutes and customaries, and et cetera, that need to be maintained and approved. That falls to us as leaders. The managers develop it, the leaders lead through it. And so the question comes to us, how are we doing? Well, we are working on the administrative needs. Our policy strategy team has for the last year been working that issue. But what about all the ministry to the boards and to the chairs? What about establishing priorities and guidance for our strategic vision? What is our strategic vision? Are we struggling with letting the management aspect of the church go and hesitating to more fully move into leadership role we need to be in? What about planning our strategy within the concept of our budget? Are we planning for the future or just trying to get by for today, this year? As I alluded to in our Camino Boots story, we need to make this program church a little better fit. We need to make room so the socks we wear properly fit, and to make sure that as we journey, our foot can swell, our parish can grow, and we still will go along without injury. We need to be sure to learn how to lace the boots so our foot doesn't slip and irritate and blister and hurt one another. We don't want to risk injury because we don't spend the time up front to properly fit. There's a story about the space shuttle. When it prepares to re-enter the atmosphere, there's a life or death event that must take place. That's the re-entry vector. If they re-enter too shallow, the shuttle will just simply skip right off the atmosphere and into space and be lost forevermore. If they come in too steep, they'll burn up as they descend. We need to make adjustments. We need to make course corrections. But as we do, we need to continue allowing our church to grow and mature in a safe way. We don't want to overcorrect, but we can't risk undercorrecting either. It won't be easy, but we can't be stymied by just sitting still. And so, here's some suggested course corrections. We need to establish ministry board chaplains, ministers from the vestry assigned to a ministry board. We need to establish a strategic visioning team within the vestry, charged with pursuing, or rather perceiving, to see, to pray about, and to begin to form what we need a year from now, 3 years from now, even beyond, up to 5 years, and then begin preparing us and guiding us and challenging us as vestry to grow into that, to set goals and build teams and prepare and program the budget. And then a third thing that I haven't talked about yet, but something that's drastically and very, very seriously needed, and that's something that I call an executive team. Some team within the vestry that's charged with an agile and responsiveness that's needed between vestry meetings, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So now I have spoken to this topic, but let's hit it directly one more time. Ministry board chaplains. One vestry member needs to be assigned to each individual ministry board. You need to serve as a ministry chaplain, or as a minister, as a chaplain, not to manage, not to run, not to assume control. This is not a return to a mutation of a pastoral-sized operation. They serve as chaplains with a ministry of support to the chair and indeed to the entire board. Many times, this chaplain will simply remain silent, but always prepared to voice the vision of the parish from the vestry, and always prepared to communicate the board needs and events of the board and the ministries to the vestry. We need a strategic visioning team. This team is charged with seeing into the future, anticipating our growing needs, our cutting edge and coming needs, and devising a strategy for the parish to get there. This will require prayer and collaboration among this group, the ability to anticipate the future and to establish our goals 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years ahead, and to establish staging goals to get us there, to know what's coming, to take those goals and begin to identify strategies to achieve those goals, to initiate action teams through the work of the entire vestry, but to initiate action teams to work those strategies. And then, like the shuttle example, we don't want to overreach, but we don't want to underreach either. It will require a balance. And finally, we need to program those strategies that we're developing. We need to vector the budget now to prepare for the future, or we'll never be able to accomplish that which we're looking forward to doing as well as needing to do. Let's talk about the executive team now. The executive team. It became clear to me over the last year that we need the ability to be flexible, to be responsive. In the Air Force, we called it being agile. And here's what I mean. If an emergency develops, we need a quick response team, an executive team that has been endorsed and authorized by the vestry in a standing way that continues without specialized episodic permission, but a standing permission to act between vestry meetings to meet the needs of the parish. And I want to offer two examples. Last year, during the demonstrations that took place over the summer throughout the nation, we in Southport, I specifically as rector, received reliable intelligence from the city that there may be a demonstration, a march that took place, then destruction, danger may accompany it. They didn't know. They were just giving us a warning. Now, I don't have the ability to call a special vestry meeting and determine the right course based upon the given situation every time it happens, because it could be extremely short notice. Yes, I do have the ability to call special vestry meetings, but the reality of getting everybody together in short notice to respond with perhaps hours notice is just not feasible. It's not realistic. We needed an immediate course of action. And so I called upon a few people and we took action. The second example, last year on 2 occasions this happened. It's necessary to remember that currently the Finance and Facilities Board or team, mission board, ministry board, there we go, I'm sorry, drafts the budget. The vestry approves the budget. If a request develops during the year that falls outside the budget that the FNF provided, a review takes place. Where will the money come from to meet that need? And the FNF needs the vestry to determine whether the budget can be violated, because if it can't be found within the budget, then we're talking about an excess to what the budget was approved at. So it goes from the ministry to the ministry board. The ministry board then presents it to FNF. The FNF looks at it to see if it can be done and sends it to the vestry for permission. The vestry sends it back to FNF because they say, well, yes, but can you find the money? And they send it back to the vestry and says, well, perhaps, but probably not. And then it goes back to from the vestry to the FNF. And you can see how this process is literally taking months, because the ministry boards meet once a month and the FNF meets once a month and the vestry meets once a month. And if those timings don't click perfectly, you have as many as 3 or 4 months taking place to make a simple budgetary decision. That's not good stewardship. It's not good business. And again, an executive team that has been authorized by vestry to act between meetings could have reduced this to simply weeks versus months. The executive team would provide, of course, regular monthly feedback, back briefing, if you will, at each vestry meeting, and it will be entered in as business to the vestry minutes, so it is transparent and it's recorded in an official documented way. Okay, moving on to the budget. I'm not sure if you've considered this before, but the budget is a theological statement. It tells us where we put our emphasis. I once had a senior priest who said all they had to do was look at a person's checkbook to see if they were serious about God. All an individual needs to do is look at our budget to see if we're serious about our vision statement, our mission statements, our calls to be disciples of Jesus. The budget reflects our vision, our priorities, and our mission. In effect, the budget tells our story with numbers. A couple of slides ago, I reminded you of how the budget is produced. At risk of boring you, I want to do this just one more time. Budget input is tasked out to individual ministries. They determine what they need for the coming year. It's provided to the FNF, and the FNF gathers all of those inputs from 50 plus ministries and puts it into a draft operating budget for the coming year. Stewardship then is conducting an annual pledge drive in hopes that the two will mesh, the needs and the amount available. FNF then does their best to sharpen their pencils and produce a draft budget. That draft budget, whether it's balanced or deficit or surplus, is provided to the vestry, and the vestry will approve the budget or send it back for further sharpening. The treasurer then, once it's approved, the treasurer then presents the budget to the parish at the annual meeting. The FNF, on a monthly and a weekly and a daily basis, manages the budget for the coming year. The ministries then, on a daily basis, are executing the budget, meaning they're spending the money. The vestry is provided with a monthly status report of what's taking place. It comes from the ministry boards through the FNF, from the treasurer and those who are attending the FNF to the vestry in the forms of a report. And we get to see how the budget is being executed and managed. Vestry members, it's important to say, need to be able to explain these reports to any parishioner who asks. The last thing we want, and I will admit I'm challenged by this at times, the last thing we want is for a parishioner to ask, Father or vestry member, can you explain to me what this means when we talk about the Mission Outreach Fund? And we don't have a clue. We need to know this. Yes, the treasurer knows it. And yes, people on FNF and people within that ministry context knows it, but we are leadership. And we need to be able to digest this and understand it in simple terms to any parishioner who asks. What do we need to do with respect to the budget? Well, treasure must be tied to ministry and mission. This means that for any ministry, remember the mission or the FNF tasks the ministry boards, and the ministry boards task each ministry with developing a budget, what they need for the coming year. This means that just wild guessing that I need $10,000 for my ministry for the budget next year for, let's just say, pastoral care, that doesn't cut it. As stewards and as planners, responsible ministers, that is, we need to be able to put dollars against resources. What am I going to use $10,000 on? Do I know, or am I just going to treat it as a slush fund? FNF is not the approving authority for spending. The ministry and the board chair are, or rather the ministry requests and the board chair does. This requires planning and preparation on each of our parts to know what I'm going to do the coming year so that I've prepared to make it happen. This step is critically important. I know that Canon Jim taught that it wasn't up to the vestry to micromanage the ministries, and it's not. How many pencils do you need, and why do you need them, and when will you use them, and couldn't smaller pencils be just as good? That's not our job as vestry to determine. The vestry's charge to be good stewards of the parish's treasure, and it's each ministry's charge to plan and to prepare. All that said, it may be that the vestry won't approve a deficit budget, and the FNF will need to cut portions of the requested budget. And ministry boards are charged with identifying where those cuts could be made. And if you haven't, you, meaning a ministry, hasn't detailed the budget, how can you know where the cut can be? Do you need 10,000 or maybe only 5,000? Maybe only 1,000 will do. What do you need versus what you want? Is it a guess or is it detailed? Strategic vision and goals must drive the budget. It has to be based upon our visioning and our ministry. We, the vestry, need to inform the F&F of the future so that draft budgets include financial planning for the future. Budget priorities must be set as well. And this means that the mission and ministry must be prioritized in some form or fashion. Another example, a mid-year budget adjustment is needed because something has been determined that is needed for our strategic planning. How is an F&F supposed to find the funds to cover that expense? Do we always just go to cash reserves to cover it? It may need to come from the operating budget, and we need to have a mission and ministry priority that's established. That's not going to be easy. Here's an example. F&F manages the budget. They manage it based upon the priorities the vestry establishes. Let's say now that there is this mid-cycle or this mid-year out-of-cycle need. The vestry determines, just for a wild example, that a playground is immediately needed for our one-year goal. Now, that's probably poor planning on the vestry's part. They should have planned it a year in advance, but let's just go with this for purposes of the argument. We've established it's a strategic priority. It needs to be done per our visioning. F&F consults the vestry prioritization, and something has to give because we only have so much money. And so F&F coordinates with the ministry board chairs. They identified that funding from faith formation, and I'm just using this as an example, but money or funding from faith formation annual retreat could be moved. It could be resourced, it could be used. And the result is that the goal is achieved for the one-year vision. The playground is ordered. However, the retreat funding was lost. And so here's the challenge. It must be communicated to the parish. They must understand what the strategic goals are for the entire parish. The visioning that's coming from the vestry. Communication has got to take place. There will be priorities established in the budget. I'm not sure how that's going to look or what that'll look like. We have to work through that. Will we color code the budget at ministry level? I don't know, but we need to do that hard work. Without understanding the strategic plan, frustration and disappointment will result on behalf of the ministry boards and the individual ministries and individual parishioners. We have to understand what we're working towards in order to understand sacrifice in our areas of ministry. And then, and only then, will the priorities make sense. Otherwise, some will see their ministry as just simply disposable, not important. And that's not the case. We've already discussed this. Each ministry is important because each ministry allows us to serve, and service is the work clothes of love, and love is how we interact with God and our neighbor. So what's before us this year? We need to establish our individual duties as vestry. Remember, there are the gifts that I talked about. Joy, love, gift, passion, grace, movement. Think. This is what we need to do. We need to think and pray about how vision is going to be organized, or how vestry, rather. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired here. How vestry is going to be organized. And so I am challenging you, I'm asking you, I'm giving you homework at this point. I referred to this at the beginning. I need you to list your preferences in orders of 1 through 3, and you need to list them 1, 2, 3 and what it is. regarding where you would like to serve on vestry, as ministry board chaplain, on strategy team, or executive team. And then I also need you to list 1 through 3 within the ministry board chaplains, which ministry you may prefer to serve as a chaplain in. There's only so many of us, and each of these teams need to be staffed. And so each of us is going to be serving in one of these positions, and you may not get your first choice. You may not get which overarching team you want to be on, or you may not get the ministry board you want to be on. But it's important that we are able to have a say-so in where we go. And so I'm asking you for your prioritization. And let me say this about ministry board chaplains. It is critical that married individuals do not serve together. So just for example, I'm picking on you, Debbie. It wouldn't be functional, it wouldn't be wise, it wouldn't be allowable for you to serve as the ministry board chaplain to the ministry board because, or the worship board, I'm sorry, because Ricky is the chair of the worship board. And so you could serve as a ministry board chaplain, but to one of the other 5 ministry boards, just not the worship board. I hope that makes sense. Then we need to confirm a new vision statement. We got to do this. Otherwise, we don't know where we're going, and we can't do any strategic planning. And I've given you what I think really needs to be the core of our vision. But I'm not in a position to just simply dictate that. That's something we need to agree upon. And then we need to communicate that vision to the entire parish ad nauseum until it's like breathing air, something that the greeters and the ushers and the readers, the deacons, all of us can simply share with any visitor or with each other. It's as natural as breathing who we are and what we do because of why. The why is so important. Now you will have been given another video to watch. It's called Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. And that expresses in very clear understanding the why of why the why is important. And so you need to watch that in conjunction with this presentation. Why we do it. Why? Okay, we also need the vestry to task the ministry boards and all the ministries to build unique mission statements. The mission statement tells us everything we do and how we do it and what we do it and when we do it based upon the why. And we can't get to the mission statements, all those different areas, until we understand why we are even here as St. Philip's. Then we need to begin to prayerfully discern our future through visioning and strategy for the 1 to 5 years. This is where the strategy team is going to kick in. And we need to begin to develop mission and ministry budget priority listings. That won't be easy. It will require work. It will require a lot of hard decision making. Now, as a reminder of what we've talked about, ministry board chaplains. The chaplains must get to know and understand the ministry board and all its ministries. They need to build relationship with the ministry board chairs. They need to attend all the ministry board meetings, not haphazardly, not as it's convenient, but as a priority. And they need to learn and understand what's happening within that, ensuring the focus and the strategic plan and goals are communicated to the ministry board and all the ministries. And they need to ensure that communication is taking place from the ministry board and ministries to the vestry. It's critically important. We need to understand what the challenges are at the ministries. We've been out of touch. Okay. The strategy team. Begin to hard work of visioning, and don't confuse visioning with the parish vision. Parish vision, 2 different things. The parish vision is who we are and why we do what we do, why we are here. Visioning is looking forward to setting goals to help us walk into the vision. Work with the entire vestry to confirm the strategic goals. We don't need to sit around in vestry meetings and do the brainstorming. That needs to take place in the strategy team. And then it comes to the vestry and we work together. The strategy team needs to identify strategies to achieve those goals. the stepping stones to make our way there, and then to initiate strategy teams. That may not even consist of vestry. It could consist of other lay people in the parish who have the gifts that we've talked about to accomplish those strategies. And we need to program those strategies into our operating budget, into our planning process for the future. And we need to make sure that we find that delicate balance between over and under reaching. And then there's the third part of the vestry of what we need to do, and that's the executive team. We need to review and take action rather on critical events. We need to be available for emergency responses such as storm damage, a coming hurricane, out of cycle needs, other things that come up. This team will then essentially and necessarily back brief the vestry at each vestry meeting and enter all the essential information into the vestry minutes so it's an official part of our record. And this needs to take place at our next vestry meeting. Okay, we've gone through a lot of adjusting our boots, and it's necessary. We have work before us, and I'm hoping that we can step into this and begin to see this accomplished. I really had hoped that we could begin this last year, but as I was preparing to bring this before the vestry, COVID came, and then we had our hands full. And I just want to say briefly regarding COVID, I just don't know how we could have done what we did any better. We didn't know what Zoom was. We had no idea how to prepare digital services uniquely and solely for people who aren't attending service. It was always just a matter of convenience to tape the service, then you could watch if you didn't come. But now we had to figure out how to program the entire service for people who weren't at church. It wasn't easy to conduct services in a church that was empty. I just want to congratulate our worship team and all the different people who provided ministry, Debbie Skillman and Lorraine and everybody else, our deacons and Ricky Evans, the people who participated in all the Zoom sessions. And it was just amazing. They don't train us for this at seminary. Good grief, when I went to seminary, we didn't even have computers yet. We still had card catalogs in the library. So what we did over the past year was remarkable. And where we're going with our digital ministry is still remarkable. We will be live streaming before long, and we will continue to live stream, and we're going to continue to learn how to grow into the future. It's going to be part of our strategy team's goal is to figure out how we can do this, to be on not just the cutting edge. We don't want to always be doing something new for new's sake, but to be able to do what needs to be done to provide ministry to our community and to evangelize our community. Okay, enough said about that. Vestry person of the day. We need the vestry person of the day prepared to return to duty as soon as we return to in-person services. We got out of the practice last year, and it is sorely missed as we came back to in-person services, even limited in scope because of attendance numbers. I dearly missed having vestry person of the day. And so the VPOD is important. The VPOD allows the parish to put a face, even with a mask on, to their lay leadership. The parish voted for each of you to serve as a leader. It's important that the parish sees you in a leadership facility or a leadership fashion. Everybody knows who the clergy are, but the vestry may be only a name on the back of a bulletin because one goes to one service and the vestry person goes to another service. And this also gives every parishioner the opportunity to provide feedback or ask questions on a weekly and regular recurring basis of their leadership. Many times the line is too long for people to greet me as the rector. And that's really where people want to stop on their way out of church. They want to shake hands or a brief dialogue with the rector. And I see people week after week that simply don't want to wait any longer in line and they move on. As short as I try to make that interchange, the line grows. And they need to have the opportunity to discuss questions or concerns with someone in person. It's easy to send an email, but people sometimes want face-to-face interaction. And so a vestry person is essential. Each service on Sunday needs to have a VPOD. Again, you may attend a different service than the one you are accustomed to attending in order to ensure coverage, but it's necessary. The duties of a VPOD at this point in time include welcoming and announcing. We're using our VPODs to assist with COVID when we're doing limited attendance. They were doing temperature readings as well as serving as greeters. They're providing safeguarding for our collections, ensuring they get from the collection basket supervised at all times and into the safe. And then they're doing other duties as needed. Now, a point to ponder and consider, and you'll all have the decision to make on this. At this point in time, we have two services a Sunday. Well, when we get back to using VPODs, we'll have two services or perhaps three a Sunday. And that could mean as many as 12 to 14 rotations a year if you do one service a Sunday. If you decide as vestry, I'm going to do, or I would like to do the entire day a Sunday, you would have 4 to 5 rotations, once a quarter. The advantage I would suggest you of doing one or the entire, all three of them, or both of them on a Sunday, is that each service will get to see you. They'll learn more about who our vestry members are. Of course, the other way is much easier for you because you simply come to one service. It's not easy being here all day on Sunday. It's not easy listening to the same sermon 2 to 3 times. It's not easy to wait between services for the next service. And so I understand it's a challenge, but something for you all to consider. That's a decision you as vestry will have to make. Expectations and requirements of vestry. Here we go. Attend all meetings. Simply put, we have 12 a year and special ones if necessary. Put them on your calendar, reserve the time and the space. The current policy right now, and it is the policy, is to replace vestry members after 3 absences. It's a cold, hard policy. We need to revisit that and amend it, I would suggest. I would suggest that we need to consider maybe concurrent absences, maybe unexcused absences. Maybe after so many visits or so many absences, rather, the rector and senior warden need to confer with this vestry member because something may be going on that's pastoral or otherwise, and it needs more attention than just simply saying, okay, you're off vestry. So we need to address that policy, but we also need to encourage you. Put those in ink in your calendar. Come prepared. Do your homework. If there are emails, have opened the emails and read them in advance. If there are read-aheads, read them ahead of time and be prepared to discuss. Maintain your vestry binder. And yes, we are returning to vestry binders. There needs to be a continuity from year to year, as well as from vestry person to vestry person, that we can pass on to our replacements or recall on by ourselves from year to year or vestry meeting to vestry meeting. A book that will contain contacts, policy listings, and I don't mean every policy, but I mean just kind of a table of contents of here's all our policies, and you can find them in the parish office. Deborah Jordan and her team have worked hard this past year to build that, and it's close to being accomplished. A listing of all the canons. Do you know what the canons are that affect vestry? You should, and you need to know, and you need to be able to refer to them. And I will tell you, they're scattered out in the canons of the church. We need to have one place for them where they're consolidated, where you can refer to them on a regular basis. We need to have a place where there's other information that's needed, that's gathered there. And the minutes, should you desire to print them out. Now, these books will be built and they'll be available before the vestry meeting that takes place in February. We'll build them in the office. You'll be responsible to pick them up, and then you will be responsible to maintain them. But they need to be utilized. They need to be maintained. They need to be passed on. Okay, reading your emails, please do that. Please read emails from fellow vestry members as well as from the clerk of the vestry, the wardens, myself as rector, or from Lorraine sending on my behalf or other members' behalf. If there is response and action needed, please do so as needed and as applicable. And finally, a note about anonymous concerns. If someone, a parish member that is, comes to you and says, I just want to give you a confidential input. I have a concern about, but please don't mention my name. I would suggest to you that you're being triangulated. Because if that person goes to one vestry member and then another vestry member and a warden and then to me, and we have a vestry meeting and we say, I have this concern. Somebody else says, I have this concern too. And yeah, I heard about it too. We suddenly think we have a huge problem. And it could just be one person, I won't say manipulating, but we end up being manipulated because we think it's a huge issue to deal with when in fact it's only a single individual. And so please do everything you can to encourage that person to come to the vestry meeting, to voice it in a public way, or to come to the wardens and discuss it, or to the rector and discuss it. It becomes dangerous when we become triangulated. So please be very, very careful about that, and don't just jump through hoops if someone comes to you and says something confidentially. On the other hand, don't disregard it. It does need to be taken seriously. All right, vestry meetings will work in a fashion a little bit different from the past. I've been concerned about how we have had things added at the last minute, how we've been kind of sidetracked, gone down rabbit trails, ended up discussing things that weren't on the agenda. And so I've asked our senior warden, Dana, to take this and see if he can manage it better for us. And so I'm going to provide a few items here, and I'm going to leave it to Dana to clarify for us at our next vestry meeting. But what I have here at this point in time is that vestry meetings will be scheduled. They are scheduled, but I mean the agendas will be scheduled in advance. And at this point in time, what I have in my notes is that they will be established and produced for us on Fridays before vestry meeting on Tuesday. If you have something you want on the agenda, they come every other month or every month. And so you need to get that to the senior warden on the Friday before the Friday prior to vestry meeting, so that the agenda can be accomplished and then sent out to us. The agenda will be sent out sometime Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, I believe. If you have read-aheads, meaning you have something you want the vestry to read before vestry meeting, you need to make sure that that agenda item is in the agenda, but you need to get the read-aheads to us by Monday, so that we have time as vestry to read that before our meeting on Tuesday. Please do not send us something Tuesday before the meeting and expect to discuss it. It will simply be deferred at this point in time to the next meeting. We had that on several occasions this past year, and it kind of, I won't say it's sidetracked, but it did hijack the agenda in terms of time. And we spent a lot of time on things we weren't prepared to discuss. If you have something, it needs to be on the agenda, and we need to have the background information to discuss it. Otherwise, it will be deferred. It's just not a good act of stewardship. Voting. You are elected by the parish to speak your mind. You were elected because of who you are and what you provided in your biography, and people know you, and that's what they want to hear. They want you to represent them based upon who you are. And so you need to speak your mind when we are talking about an issue and an item. And then you need to vote. And then we need, as a vestry, a block, a unit, a unified group to support however that vote went. Please do not take votes personal. Do not make the concerns and the items that we're voting on a personal issue. This is for the best, and it's for the ministry of the parish. It's for the ministers of the parish. It is for the people of the parish. And so please don't buy into or don't own a personal agenda within the context of what we're voting on. Remember what I talked about earlier with respect to a gift. It is a joyful movement of God's grace. If you are not getting joy out of serving on vestry, consider your calling, consider your gift, and if necessary, consider stepping down and allowing someone else to serve. We don't want people who are not filled with joy serving in these capacities. And that's not just vestry. I mean, in any function in the parish, the result of your action in the parish should be a loving joy, a joy that is based in love, a joy that comes from doing because of the why. Okay. Also, you need to be available to the parish. If there's an event going on in the parish, if it's the lobster sale, if it's the ECW's fall bazaar, fall, I forget the term for it, the fall, the name escapes me, but you know what I'm talking about. If there's something else going on, please be available. Do your best, if nothing else, to just make an appearance. It's incredibly important to the ministries of the parish to know that leadership supports. It's important to the parish to know that what they're doing is of value. Be available after services and before services. Make sure you wear your name tag that says it's your vestry. Make sure people know who you are, not so much as I'm on vestry, but because I'm here to serve. Servant leaders, that's who we are. And then finally, tend the garden. What that means is take care of yourself. Set your boundaries. You can become over-involved in church. You can become over-involved. Set your boundaries and make sure you're taking care of yourself with personal prayer and personal time with God, time with your family, and time with the church. Clergy and staff. The clergy and the staff work for the rector. They work for the rector. Please coordinate anything you need, any vestry work you want from the staff through me. If you need Lorraine to do something, it needs to come through me. I keep Lorraine incredibly busy. Believe me, she does not have time for just going out and sitting on the porch. She is very, very busy. And so I ask you to please coordinate your needs through me to her, as well as our deacons, and especially when we get our new assistant priest, work through me. And respect their time off on holidays, on their days off. Do your best to respect it. Sunday's a work day for us. And so it's okay for you to come and with work needed, realize, however, that Sunday is a work day for us. Don't say something to us between services and hold us accountable for what you said. It needs to be followed up with an email. We will not remember. We are interacting with anywhere up to 250 people on a Sunday. And because somebody said something to us, we probably, in all likelihood, will not remember what the first person said by the end of the day after we've met with so many people. Okay. What's next? Me, rector. I am available to you. As vestry, as wardens, I'm available to you all the time. Granted, I have a Sabbath day and a personal day. This diocese gives us 2 days a week for personal time. I elect to use one as a Sabbath, by which I mean I don't check my emails. I really don't keep my phone with me once we have another priest. I'm allowing Jeff to take care of that, Father Jeff, right now. And our assistant priest will cover that when they're here. But I take a Sabbath day where I just turn off the church and I try to just restore my batteries. And then I have a personal day where I'm doing things for my home, my family, my wife, myself, running errands, doing chores, mulching the yard, and that sort of thing. That being said, if there's an emergency, I'm going to respond as best I can. Now, I'm going to respect the Sabbath day because it's an emergency. We have somebody who can take care of that. But you can still text me. You can text me and tell me you sent me an email, and I will look at it as soon as I'm able to. Beyond that, my work days are Saturday through Wednesday. Saturday, I'm in the office typically until noon. And then the rest of my quote unquote work day is in the evening or the late afternoon when I'm going through my sermon yet again and preparing for the liturgy of the next day and spending time in prayer. Sunday is from the time I get up in the morning until I come home, which is about 1, anywhere between noon and 1, depending upon how the day unfolds. And then Monday through Wednesday, I am in the office or wherever it is that I need to be. You are encouraged. If you need me, text. That's the best way to get me. If you need me, don't send an email because I may not see it. Send me a text. And if it's an absolute emergency, you have had an accident, there's an emergency, in terms of a health crisis or a spiritual crisis, text me and then call me, and I will respond. Okay, folks, that gets us to the end of this vestry presentation. I was shooting for 90 minutes and I hit it with 1 minute to spare. We are going to try to establish a time to meet via Zoom to discuss questions you have, to elaborate as best we can on anything that was presented in this retreat. I hope that you are able to make your way through this. The advantage of this is you can go back and fast forward and listen to places you want to listen to all over again. And then do your best to understand that I've been speaking for 90 minutes and I may have said some things in accident that I didn't intend to say. So if you find some snafus, we will want to correct those things. But in the meantime, thank you for your attention. Thank you for spending the time of going through this. Again, you all are special. You have answered a call of ministry in the parish of St. Philip's, and I just thank you for it from the bottom of my heart. God's blessings. And now I'm going to try to figure out how to turn this off.